Facts First presents. This'll force you to look at cops differently. Jaylisa Corbett's days were not easy. Each morning her commute to work was 12 miles there and 12 miles home. She had to leave the house in the morning when it was still dark to make sure that she arrived at her job at Bojangles on time. Regardless of the weather, she had to walk to work. During one of her commutes, it was pouring rain outside. What happened that day would change her view of law enforcement for the rest of her life. And hopefully it'll change your outlook on cops as well. On this particular morning, North Carolina resident Jaylisa Corbett was walking to Bojangles' famous Chicken and Biscuits. She walked from her home at the Stonegate Mobile Home Community in western Rocky Mount to her job at 101 West Nashville Drive in Nashville. It was pouring down rain that day, and Jaylisa noticed that a car was following her. It was still dark outside, so Jaylisa began to get nervous. Anytime a woman walking alone is being followed, well, that's cause for concern. When Jaylisa turned around, she realized it was a police car. The lights were on and Jaylisa started to wonder what was going on. Seeing that it was a police officer following her, it did not calm her anxiety. For Jaylisa to get to work every day, she had to walk 6 miles to Bojangles. She worked there every day, and since she didn't have a car, her only option was to walk to work. The 6-mile walk to work was challenging, but the 6-mile walk home was even worse. After being on her feet all day working, that walk home was always tough. Jaylisa knew what she had to do, though, if she was going to keep her job, so it was her daily routine. The only good part about walking to work was that the temperature outside was never really too hot or too cold. The weather was often pleasant in the Nashville area when she walked to work, except on days like this one when it was pouring rain. The first thing that crossed Jaylisa's mind was that the officer that was following her was going to stop and question her. Maybe it meant that she'd be late for work. Well, she didn't want to be delayed, especially since it was pouring rain. She worried that if the officer did question her, things might just get worse. She tried to keep walking confidently, but her stride did nothing. The officer did not take her confident stride as a sign that she was walking with purpose and in a hurry, and he began to beep his horn. When the officer tried to stop Jaylisa, she started to get stressed out. She wondered why the officer was trying to stop her in the first place. Had something happened at work before she arrived? Had something happened in her neighborhood and the police wanted to ask her some questions? Jaylisa was a law-abiding citizen, and she knew she hadn't done anything illegal, but did the officer know that? She had no criminal record, she had no idea what was going on. She couldn't think of a single reason for this officer to be stopping her while she was just trying to get to work on time. Sergeant Scott Bass worked the early morning shift every day. He also patrolled the same area, which took him past the Stonegate Mobile Home Community, which took him straight to the Nash County Sheriff's Office. He was heading back to the station when he saw a woman walking. That was not unusual. He had seen her walking most mornings. What was different on this day was that it was pouring rain outside, and the woman was trying to forge ahead anyway. When he turned on his siren, he didn't do it to scare the woman, he just wanted to get her attention. Since it was raining so heavily, he worried that she wouldn't look up if he pulled up beside her, so he turned on his siren. The deputy sheriff decided that this would be a good day to stop the woman to talk. He'd seen her many times, but on some days he didn't. He returned to the station late on some days, so their schedules didn't always match up. This wasn't the first time that he wanted to stop and talk to the woman, but on most days he was in a hurry and didn't have the time to do so. On this day, he saw her walking, it was raining really hard, so he believed it'd be a good time to stop her to talk. He knew that it could be days or even weeks before their schedules matched up perfectly again. When Jaylisa woke up that morning, the sky was gray, but it didn't look too bad outside. She knew it was going to rain, so she took her umbrella. She figured she could take shelter underneath it while she walked, keeping her dry for the day. Unfortunately, things did not work out that way. While she was walking, the storm picked up, the wind was blowing hard. A strong gust of wind ripped the umbrella from her hand, which broke it. Now she was walking in the pouring rain without an umbrella. This was not going to make her walk to work easy or fun, and the fact that she was being flagged down by a police officer now made her commute even worse. Jaylisa was used to walking to work each day and being on her feet. Between the commute to and from work and being at work, she was on her feet most days, all day. Jaylisa made sure that she wore comfortable shoes every day. She didn't mind spending a bit more money on her sneakers because she needed a comfortable pair. On this day, in the rain, after her umbrella had failed and she was walking in the rain and through puddles, her shoes were not holding up. They were soaked and they were weighing her feet down. Soon they were soaked and making her feet hurt. She was worried about how she was going to get through the day being soaking wet like this, with wet shoes and sore, cold feet. The last thing she wanted was to be detained by a police officer. Jayleesa walked 12 miles every day to work. Some might wonder why she was willing to make such a long commute on foot. She says that when she leaves the house in the morning, she thinks about what she needs to do to support her family and keep food on the table, and that's motivation enough for her to take that long trip each day. She couldn't let the weather be an issue either because regardless of the rain, her bills would always be there, so she couldn't miss a single day of work. On this rainy morning when the sheriff's deputy was trying to stop Jayleesa, she was trying to figure out what he wanted with her. Had she crossed the street illegally? Was it illegal for her to walk along the busy road? Did the officer think that the weather conditions made it too dangerous for her to be walking? She continued to try and figure out why the officer wanted to speak to her. Jayleesa knew that she could only ignore the officer for so long. She hoped that it was just a mistake. Maybe he'd mistaken her for somebody else. She hoped that the officer would drive by her on his way to stop a driver, but that didn't happen. She knew that evading the officer would be more stressful and potentially get her into trouble. She realized the only thing for her to do would be to stop and find out what the officer wanted. Jayleesa turned around with a defiant stance and waited for the officer to come to a complete stop so that she could finally face the music. She knew that if she ever was going to get out of the rain and get to work, she had to speak to him. When Jayleesa stood there waiting for the officer to stop, her anxiety kicked into high gear. She tried to think of something to say if the officer questioned her. She couldn't think of anything good to say because she had no idea why he was stopping her in the first place. She had no idea what to tell the officer when she stopped. But she didn't have to say anything. When the car stopped and she saw the words "Sheriff, Nash County" on the vehicle, the officer spoke first. When the officer pulled up to Jayleesa, he was sitting calmly in his car. He didn't try to apprehend her, which made her feel a little bit better. He told her that his name was Sergeant Bass and he politely asked her to get into the car. She told him that she couldn't because she was going to be late for her shift at Bojangles, but the officer insisted. Jayleesa knew that she couldn't ignore the command of a police officer, so she relented. She got into the officer's car knowing that she'd have a lot of explaining to do at work afterwards. When Jayleesa got into the officer's car, he started driving. He didn't speak, so she had no idea why she was in the car in the first place. Her anxiety started kicking up into full gear again. While she waited for him to say something, she looked out the window trying to figure out where they were, but it was raining so hard she couldn't tell where they were or where they were going. She realized the only thing that she could do was just to sit back and wait for the officer to tell her what was going on. While the officer was driving, Jayleesa became more and more frustrated. If she was going to be arrested, didn't she have the right to know why? Why wasn't the officer speaking to her or telling her where they were going? Soon her anxiety turned to anger. He was keeping her in the dark, and that's not fair. It wasn't until she looked out the window and she realized what was going on. They were outside Bojangles. Even though she was at work, she still worried. What would her boss think of seeing her pull up to work in a police car? Would he think that she was in trouble? The day was confusing already, and Jayleesa didn't know what to think. Sergeant Bass saw Jayleesa many days wearing her Bojangles apron, walking to work. She was a familiar face to him, and he concluded that she was on her way to work every morning. He knew the approximate distance from the trailer park to Bojangles, and it was a far walk. He admired her grit and determination, and it was something that he just couldn't ignore on days like this one when the rain was coming down hard. The officer was impressed by the woman's strength. Just driving back and forth, the 6-mile stretch of road was exhausting for Sergeant Bass. He couldn't imagine walking that each day. That morning, her tenacity touched him because of the weather, and he knew that he had to stop her. He wanted to help her out. He knew the commute back and forth took about 4 hours a day, and he simply wanted to help. Sergeant Bass told Jayleesa why he stopped her. He told her that she walks the same road that he patrols and he didn't mind giving her a ride in bad weather because it wasn't out of his way. At the time, he didn't tell her how much he admired her determination. She thanked him for the ride and didn't expect to hear from him again until he called her, asking her to meet him at the station. When he requested her presence, she wasn't too worried this time. She knew that he was a nice guy, so there must be a good reason for his call. Being summoned was a bit nerve-wracking, but she went to meet him anyway. When Jaleesa got to the station, Sergeant Bass took her out to the parking lot where there was a brand-new Schwinn Fairhaven women's cruiser bicycle waiting for her. It was a gift. He thought that it would help her to get to and from work faster, making her life a bit easier. Jaleesa couldn't believe it. She got so emotional. The officer told her that he admired her and respected her desire to support her family. He called the local Walmart and told the manager all about Jaleesa, and the manager agreed to donate the bike to make her life easier. Sergeant Bass wanted to let Jaleesa know right away that the gift was not charity. He told her it was a hard-earned gift, and she deserved it. She couldn't believe any police officer would go out of their way like this. His generosity and empathy touched her in a way that she never expected. This incredibly kind and thoughtful gesture changed the way that she looked at the police. Thanks to that bike, she didn't have to get up so early. When word of this good deed got out, the two were interviewed, and the reporter asked Jaleesa why she didn't work at the branch closer to her home. She told the reporter that there were no openings at that branch, so she took the job that she was offered. When Bojangles heard her story, she was offered a job at the closer location, and she seized the opportunity. Jaleesa couldn't believe that being stopped in the rain by a police officer could affect her life in such a positive way. She says she will forever be grateful to Sergeant Bass. Show your appreciation to Sergeant Bass and Jaleesa by clicking that like button, and subscribe for more.